I was trying to get tickets to Glastonbury, and I texted him being like, hey, I can't, I was just wondering, like, could you get me into Glastonbury?
Uh-huh.
And he called me, he was like, I have one better. Why don't you play with us?
Oh my God.
That way you'll definitely have tickets to Glastonbury.
Oh, come on.
Oh man. And I was like, of course, absolutely. You know, so yeah, I played Paradise, and it was the craziest weekend of my life.
I bet.
Honestly, like the company those guys keep, and also just the level at which they operate. I mean,
oh yeah,
I have to say the performance itself was amazing,
Sure.
and hanging out with all these like A-listers backstage and all that jazz,
Sure.
like it was fun.
Right.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But the really special part was the rehearsal, because it was so tight. Every single person, I mean, there were hundreds of people there, was on their game.
Wow.
Super kind, super professional. And it was just very cool to see one of the biggest bands in the world prepare a show.
What's going on? Welcome to The New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book, 3rd edition, all formats, audiobook, ebook, hardcover, out now. Today, I am at Spotify's headquarters in one of their podcast recording studios, and I got the distinct pleasure to interview one of my favorite artists and good friend, Victoria Canal. Now, this is Victoria's second time on the show. She was one of the first guests way back when we first launched in 2020, and she's come a long way since. She just released her new album, Slowly It Dawns. I definitely encourage you to check that out. It's a beautiful record. She has won 2 Ivor Novello awards. She won the Ivor Novello Award for Rising Star. This is a huge deal in the UK. She has performed on Jimmy Kimmel, Jools Holland show. She performed with Coldplay at Glastonbury. Yes, on stage with them, singing and playing piano for Paradise as the featured artist there. She has co-written some of the songs on her new album with members of the 1975. She also starred in the Apple TV series Little America, an episode in the series Little America as her acting debut. Today we talk about her journey as an artist. She performed at the Troubadour last night, which I caught. She was headlining the Troubadour show here in LA. I was happy to catch that performance of hers, and we talk a little bit about that, talk about life as a touring artist. She is signed with a major label. She's with Parlophone Records, that's under Warner Music Group. And this, she talks about the difference between kind of being a DIY independent artist for 10 years, now with a major label, what that's like. We dig into kind of the pressures both ways of how to operate as an indie artist, as a major label artist. We talk about fan interaction and how to attract the right kinds of fans on social media. And she's very wise beyond her years, thinking about how to approach social media and how to approach the metrics and the numbers and the pressures and all of that. And you're definitely going to want to stick around to the very end where she really opens up a bit about that as well. She is an incredible artist, great storyteller, brilliant lyricist. Definitely listen to this record if you haven't already. And you can find Victoria Canal on all the socials. Listen to that new album, Slowly It Dawns. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on the socials. Find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram. Right now, if you wouldn't mind just pausing this, leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Leave us a comment on Spotify. You can leave comments on Spotify now or a comment on YouTube, all of that good stuff. But visit aristake.com. You're going to hear her talk about the importance of the mailing list. Get on our mailing list. That's the best way for us to get in touch with you. aristake.com. Get on that email list. All right, let's kick into the show. Victoria Canal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hello. Fresh off of your Troubadour headlining performance, which was incredible. I was so happy to be able to catch that. How does it feel morning after?
Well, I mean, I've been wanting to play at that venue, headline there, like for my whole life. You know, it's such a historic place, and but also it just feels like by the time you get to this point, it's just one of many shows, you know what I mean? And I think the thing that makes it special is whatever you bring to it. And there was really a special energy last night, and I felt like I took the opportunity to just be me.
you really transformed the room. Like, I've been to countless shows at the Troubadour, and it always felt bigger. Like all the other shows that I've seen, it just felt massive when I was there. I'm like, wow, this is huge. You transformed the room to make it feel like a living room, which was so cool. And it really was very much you. Like, you really took over the space energetically, because it was still the Troubadour. You didn't like physically change the room, but like the energy in there. And I love that you treated it like a living room concert, honestly. Like the stories, and everyone was just like with you right there, and it just felt so intimate and vulnerable. I mean, I guess, which like really connects to your music and the album and all of that. It was nice.
Yeah, I had the vision to make it sort of a living room show, with the set design, just like ordering candles and lamps and like a rug, a Persian rug. And my favorite shows that I've ever been to feel like that. You know, like I saw Adrian Lenker at the Barbican last year. And, I think it's like a maybe 3,000 cap venue, but like you said, it just felt like it was a living room because she just sat in the middle and had a violinist on this side and a piano player on that side and was just talking and playing. It was awesome.
Yeah. My favorite part of the night, when you're playing Swan Song, and which is, I mean, you set it up by talking about how, someone close to you was diagnosed with a fatal illness. And so already that's where we begin.
Right.
And halfway through, you mentioned that we could put our arms around the person next to us. And I turned to, and my friend and I were around each other, and I turned to my friend next to me who had lost his mother not too long ago. And I turned to him to put my arm around him, and he is bawling. And I didn't know, like, I didn't like notice that until you said that. And then all of us saw that. And so like, we were all just like huddled around him, holding him. And like, that kind of experience to just like have that and bring people together. Have you done that before? Have you known like that song brings that out, and that is just like, it was so needed. It was like the thing that he needed the most in that moment. I think a lot of people in that room needed the most in that moment. And I wouldn't have even noticed him next to me, just like really in it.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for facilitating that.
Yeah, of course. So I was part of a sort of artist collective that went on tour a few years ago, and I just sang that song. It wasn't a full show. And for the background, there was a compilation, a sort of collage of people that had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And people from the audience had sent in their own pictures. And so it was this very cathartic, memoriam for people who have passed. And I just saw people crying in the audience every night, and I just knew that if I was sitting next to them, I would want to put my arm around them, or if that was me, I would want someone to put my arm around me. So I started thinking, I have a responsibility as the performer in the room to be the conduit of connection. It's up to me how people feel in that room. That's my responsibility. So with that song, I have realized that it cracks people open in a way where they need to be held, you know, and I can't do that from the stage more than just singing the song. So that's why I invite people to consensually, gently put their arms around each other.
Right.
Especially the ones that came alone, you know.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite part of the show.
Mine too. And it was, it just like getting back to that living room space that you created. It really, I like watching the audience as much as I like watching the performer. Typically, when I'm at a show and I'm looking around, and for all the songs, for the most part, everyone is kind of like has this light smile on their face, and they're singing. A lot of them are singing along the words, but it was all like everyone felt connected. And as you talk about like this conduit of connection, like you did a great job of creating that space and being that kind of connection. And I feel like leaving, everyone felt closer to everyone else. And so we might have all gone in strangers, but we all kind of came out friends.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really all I want. You
Yeah.
know, this industry is a really tricky one to stay aligned with your values. You know,
Yeah.
there's so much smoke and mirrors and distractions and, you know, this sort of addiction to quick validation and quick
Yeah.
return,
Yeah.
you know, and so to combat that, I have actively sought out what's real, you know, like writing songs that feel real to me, that
Yeah.
have layers of profundity to them.
Yes.
You know, what's real about the show, you know, and I've gone through my journey. Last year, I tried doing a pop show. I had ears, I had tracks, I was like running around doing the pop star thing, trying to be as hot as possible.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like doing that thing.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, it took all the joy out of what I do music for. And so I've since that tour, really been trying to realign with what it is that is the reason I do this. Because if you're already going to the lengths of doing this for a living,
Yeah.
which is basically impossible to accomplish,
Yeah.
you might as well stick to what it is about it that fulfills you. You know, there's no use in doing what you don't like within the space that's already hard enough to get to. So, you know, one of the other things I do is there's a fan book by the merch table, and I leave a Polaroid camera and some pens, and I invite people to take a picture of themselves, and sometimes with the strangers that they've met at the show,
Nice.
new friends,
Yeah, right.
and stick a little picture in the book and write, you know, either what the show meant to them or whatever, something about my music or just whatever they want.
Yeah.
And that's another way that feels like a little bit anti-social media, pro-real connection. You
Right.
know? Where I see people, like human beings who have chosen to spend their money and show up to my show, you know, and 300 people in this industry, it doesn't feel like, you know, you can't tell the head of some label that this artist sold 300 tickets, you know, sign them for this huge advance, you know.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's small timey technically, and I recognize that, but it feels like so many people when you start to realize that each person is an individual who you've impacted.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
That 300 people in a room versus 300 views on TikTok.
Right.
You know, it's a completely different scale of magnitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the impact also, it's I mean, that's the thing. We as an industry, we've become so obsessed with numbers and metrics, and you know, and you sing about this a lot on the record of just kind of comparison and feeling inadequate.
Right.
And there's all those pressures of the industry that, I mean, it's impossible to avoid, but being in the live space and to actually connect with those 300 people, I mean, that is so impactful, and you can't replace that on social media.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we're bombarded by the numbers, the view numbers and the stream counts and all of that stuff, and it just dehumanizes the whole experience of being a musician.
Exactly.
And so the live space, I think, you know, it's like our last place that is like remaining where we can feel that connection again and like remember why we're doing this.
Right, and thus it presents the tragedy of the economics behind touring.
Yeah.
You know, like I lose so much money on tour. I am not making money as a touring artist. You know, like I make money other ways with like private events and corporate stuff to be able to supplement the touring. You know, but like. I'm lucky if I break even, let alone make a profit. And that's me not even taking a band on the whole tour. I take a band on 2 shows, and I have a duo for the rest of the tour.
Oh, wow.
And still, I'm losing several thousands of dollars.
Why is that? I think that to a lot of people is very surprising. I was just chatting with someone who's not in the industry, and when it kind of came out that all these artists were canceling tours for financial reasons, and artists that are playing theaters and thousands a night, and you know, you're playing you know, clubs and hundreds a night. It's kind of, you know, what do you see is the problem? Why are the economics just not working out, and have things shifted, or why is it so difficult these days?
Well, It's a great question. I think if you literally just look at the spreadsheet of how much you're getting paid for the show, and say you're going to a city where you might not sell out, so you don't get you basically only get the guarantee of what's at the door, which might be a couple grand, you know? And then if you're taking a band, each person is $300 or $400 a day.
Right.
You know, you have to provide individual accommodation for those people if you want to be treating them well. So
Right.
everybody needs their own hotel room. That's another, $800 to $1,000 to provide for those people.
Sure.
You need to rent a car, or a van,
Yeah.
which is several thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
There are flights. If you have flights and you have a lot of gear, then you're checking in all that gear, and then there's per diems, and there's a tour manager fee and a crew fee, So it's like when you start looking at it, even when you scale down as much as possible, only taking 2 or 3 people on the road, you could still be in the hole, 5, 10, 15 grand. I mean, I opened for Hozier on tour a couple years ago, and I lost about $25,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild. And I mean, right. And so it's kind of like notoriously openers don't tend to make much money as the opener, but at the same time, I mean, that's wild. And that was like including merch, including all of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's production of merch. There's shipping the merch.
Sure.
There's vinyl's really expensive to produce, and then storage if you don't sell it all, and all this stuff, it just really adds up. And then to be completely honest, it really depends on the personnel you hire and how efficient they are. It's like a good tour manager is really important.
Yeah.
And things can be run very efficiently or not, and those things add up like over time.
Yeah.
Every decision adds up over time, and it's really important. I mean, it's taken me years to find people I can trust, because I'm such a DIY artist that I feel like I always need to be aware of everything that's going on. I'm not very good at delegating.
Yeah.
It's something I'm working on. But to be honest, when I have delegated, things slip through the cracks.
Yep.
And so it's like striking this balance where no one's going to be thinking about it or worrying about it as much as I am.
Sure.
And I am the CEO of my business.
Yes.
And I need to have eyes on everything. So it's easy to avoid as an artist and be like, oh, they know the money stuff and that's not my thing, and I'm just going to like roll with it. But then you could be, indebted to your label, like for tour support, you could have tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, I had a friend who was in a band, and they had like 30 grand of tour support in their label contract, and their management used that money for his own personal stuff. Because they never looked at the money, they didn't realize until after the tour that they were spending from their own bank account. I'm basically going into debt. Yeah. But the tour support money was gone.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Because the manager had stolen it.
Oh,
so you have to keep eyes on where your money is.
Right. Well, I mean, that's like a great point. It's just like, it's hard enough when everyone is honest and ethical, let alone when you work with people who are not and take advantage of you. But you make a great point as you are the CEO of your business. And I think that's really important. And because you had that DIY mindset and mentality, even though you're with a major label, it's kind of like to go into it with that mindset, because you have been doing this for 10 years as a DIY artist, as an independent, and so you can kind of go into every situation with your eyes open. But that's really great advice for any artists out there. Is just, I think some of the artists that fall into success very quickly might just leave it up to everybody else and just not want to focus on, because that's not the fun stuff. I mean, at any stage of this, like, who wants to look at spreadsheets?
Totally. Totally. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, who wants to handle logistics? Like, that's not the fun part of the job.
You just want the bus, and you want the band,
right, and the shows and recording and whatever. So like, with all the hats that you wear and all the things that it takes these days to be an artist in 2025, what are the parts that you enjoy, and what are the parts that are kind of necessary that you don't really love to do, that you wish you couldn't? And then what are the ones that just like, are a drudge and you would pass off the second you can afford to?
Great question. Let's see. The parts that I enjoy, I love being in the studio. I love the conception period when no one's watching and you're just an ephemeral blob and you're like, anything is possible.
Yeah.
You know, I love that part. And then I also love talking to the fans at shows. Like yesterday at the Troubadour, I went down in my sweats before performing and to the main pit and was just like talking to fans that had come because I recognized several, and they really got me like energized to perform.
Oh, nice.
I really love like seeing how excited they are, and they'll request songs, and it just reminds me of what my like creativity and what my work means to people outside of me, because I live with it all the time.
Right.
You know, I'm used to myself.
Yeah.
I'm tired of myself, to be completely honest.
Yeah, right.
So like, it's nice to be refreshed by interacting with people who I'm just a little piece of their life, you know, but I might have, something I've made has had some sort of impact on them. So that's something that really means a lot to me and that I enjoy. Things I enjoy less, mixes. I find the mixing process to be very tedious.
You're not mixing though.
No,
just
but
being part of it with the mixing engineer and having to go back and forth and
the mixing process where you're like, you know, 10, 12, 15 mixes in.
Oh my gosh.
And you don't even know what you're listening to anymore. And you're tired of the song, you know.
Right.
The song sucks, I'm throwing it away. And,
yeah.
you know, so like I think staying committed to the work through that process is really challenging.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't love the money part, like in terms of always having to think about it. You know, I mean, I sometimes feel a little jealous of the artists that are like, yeah, I never check my bank account, but I'm touring a bus and, you know, I'm doing great and blah, 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 and whatever. And for some people that works, you know,
But then years later, you hear the cases of like Billy Joel or Alanis Morissette, their business manager stole millions from them.
That's crazy.
Millions.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and they didn't even notice. Oh yeah, both of them, their business manager just stole millions from them.
That's crazy.
They finally found out, and it's a lawsuit, and it's a whole thing. But that went on for decades for Billy Joel, and many years for Alanis too.
Wow, that's
awful.
Crazy. That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. I mean, I think definitely that part, the just like money management and the anxiety that comes along with that and the instability, I think that's challenging. And another thing I find tricky is like, you really have to put on a brave face and do your job as a performer and an artist, even when you are going through really shitty things in your own life. And that's like, to me, one of the most challenging parts is like, I could be really having like a very, very challenging day, but ultimately at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever it is, I have to put my game face on and make sure people have a good time. That's my responsibility. It's also my choice, you know, so like I am choosing to do it, and I could very easily choose to do something else, but that is a challenge and also something I feel proud of being able to do, you know?
Do you have any tricks that can help get you in that mode if you're having a really awful day and you're like, you need to get on stage, you need to bring it for your fans?
I'm still finding it, but like last night, what I did was go talk to the fans before the show. That was like, okay, I'm here. That grounded me a little bit. And then also just like having something fucking hot to wear and like you know, and like makeup and styling, and it might seem like vanity, but I honestly think it's a good way to fake it till you make it, you know. But you know, at the same time, part of my job is to be revealing of the stuff that I go through. You know, it's part of what people value in me, and that it's kind of like paradoxical, because it's both things at once. You have to perform as if you're put together, but then you also have to share all the deepest parts of yourself in a very exposing and vulnerable way. And that can just be really challenging. I mean, talking about body dysmorphia or comparison, mental health stuff, like you know, abuse and things like that. It's really complicated to commit to doing that for a living, to bringing things up, you know, which is why artists like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan use their stage personas to celebrate rather than ruminate. And I have tried that, and it's just not for me. I've tried to be fun.
Yeah.
I've tried to do the sort of escapist thing,
Sure.
and that's their bag.
Yeah.
But for me, no matter how hard I try, I have to sink into the really difficult feelings in the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, even your songs that teeter on the like party girl edge, you still like slip in a few very introspective, vulnerable lyrics there. You can't ever get away from that.
Right, I know.
Pull from that. But that's authentic and that's honest to you. And, you know, Sabrina and Chappell, that's their lane.
Authentic.
That's their
self.
They're feeling authentic there, and Charlie XCX is authentically doing lines off the board, so it's great at her shows. But you know, it's so because you go to that space when you're writing and you allow yourself to be that vulnerable for the songwriting. When you have these songs, is there a different emotional experience for you from the writing stage to the recording to the performing, or do you try to go to that same place, that same origin story of when you wrote it for each of those experiences?
It's a great question. I feel like when I'm writing, it's almost always like a journal entry. You know, I'm a religious journaler. Every single day since 2006, I've been journaling.
That's wild. Every day
Every
for
day.
Almost 20 years. Crazy.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I have shelves and shelves and shelves of journals.
Amazing.
So that's my writing space. Headspace is like basically therapy, you know, self-soothing. And then recording, I find to be more often a collaborative process. And I feel cool. Like I feel like just like a badass motherfucker,
Yeah.
you know? And like, it doesn't matter the song. I could be really just so, just nerding out on microphones and the engineering side of it and the palette and choices. And I think I feel like a mad scientist, you know,
Cool.
in that space. So
Yeah. So that's more fun.
I love that part of the
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
Honestly, I really
Nice.
do. And I'm trying to make it more the main part of my life, I think. And then performing is kind of a back and forth thing where it's like you fall in and out of love with the music because of how many times you're performing it, I feel.
Yeah.
But you know, like Black Swan is a song that I will always love performing. And then every, you know, 30th time that I perform it, it'll make me just absolutely sob like a baby on stage.
Oh, wow.
And it just like hits me that and I think the cool thing about performing is that you find new meaning in the songs. Like totally fucking fine. I didn't even realize the layers to the song until this past week, and I got like frankly sexually assaulted by someone, by a total stranger in broad daylight, and now when I sing that song, it's that's what it's about. And it wasn't about that before. It was about being sick before.
Oh, wow.
And now it's about being violated, you know, and it's crazy to me that I can now find catharsis and really imbue my anger and frustration into that song in a way that I needed. And like, thank God for that, you know?
That body's not mine. That body's not mine.
Yeah, I'm totally fucking fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. That's interesting because a lot of times, you know, when songwriters and artists put out music, it's almost like a release from the song, of like ownership over the song, and they're releasing it to everyone else. And then listeners take that song and they personalize it to their own stories. And it's not necessarily the importance of the song isn't as much of what does it mean to the artist, it's what does it mean to me, the listener.
Totally.
But you're kind of all of that, and the way that you're able to evolve with your songs, it's almost like you're internalizing this song from a new perspective, which is fascinating. I've never really heard of artists kind of doing that, of like evolving as they grow, then they can revisit the song and not go back to the place of where they were when they wrote it, but like approach it from who they are now and find new meaning in it. That's great. That's really cool.
I mean, I always think about Cat Stevens, Father and Son. I think it's called Father and Son. You know that song?
Yeah.
And he recorded it as when he was young, from the son's perspective.
Oh yeah.
And then he re-recorded it from the father's perspective in the modern day, and made it a duet with his younger self.
Oh my God, incredible! That's so cool.
It's so cool, and both sides now is another example.
Joni Mitchell, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing her, I saw her do that at Fire Aid at the Forum, and like that bucket list life moment.
Oh my God!
And there's not a dry eye in the house and seeing her do that. But she also actually recorded that early on, and then recorded it like
the orchestral version, right?
Yeah, like decades later as an older woman, and that song, I mean, it just hits
gives me
so
chills
differently.
just thinking about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
music is amazing that way.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It can teach you things about yourself.
Yeah.
That song is just such an amazing example of how life teaches you things over time, and you say things when you're young, and then you realize they're still true when you're older, but with new context and new meanings. Amazing.
And to be that like just prophetic, or just to write something like that in your 20s, and for it to then evolve in meaning, and to be able to imagine or see, but have it land then in your 60s, and reflect back on that, and then it just opens up so many new caverns and unravels so many new layers. It's wild. Yeah. So let's talk about the new record,
sure.
which we have been, but Slowly It Dawns, beautiful offering, and it's it's like reflective and meditative and introspective and vulnerable and so beautiful. And musically, I mean, it feels like you've kind of settled into this space where you feel very comfortable. And over the years, like you've talked about in the performance realm, but in the recording and songwriting, like you've explored different styles of songwriting and tapped into different genres and kind of grown. But do you feel like this writing and recording process felt, well, I guess, how did it feel different from the previous recording and writing experiences?
Great question. Well, part of the theory behind the album is that you start out young and naive, and as you get deeper into the album, it comes from a more wounded and wiser perspective. And with each song, I feel like there's like a newer layer of complexity and sort of unraveling the way that life does to you. In regards to process, I feel like all the younger, more naive stuff was much more collaborative and much more like, let me have fun in the studio with people that I love and admire, like the guys from the 1975 or
June Baby.
Yeah, June Baby, right. Or Egg White and Lapsley and Callie Sober, and just like very much in the room with talented folks and being like, oh, this is sick, but right. then the other stuff that's much more introspective, I wrote alone in my room or on the bus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like I flip-flop kind of back and forth between who I think I'm supposed to be as an artist and who I really am as an artist. And I think in kind of a meta way, I allowed this album to showcase that process.
Yeah.
Of the pop thing that I think people want from me versus what's really in my heart. And the thing is I still love the pop thing, you know? And so that's why I put it on there. Yeah. Because I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if it's as fundamentally true as the other stuff.
Sure.
You know?
Totally. And I mean, it's interesting because yes, you get that from the music and lyrically, but you're also, we are following you, the process of all of this because, and you're very open about that. I mean, you openly kind of talk about comparing yourself, and I loved the line, how can I be a person where there's a ceiling here and by God you're taller than it. I dwell underneath, pushing harder than I want to admit. And
I'm so glad you appreciate that lyric.
I love that line. But I think we can all relate to that because everyone is comparing themselves to somebody, and the fact that they're taller than the ceiling that we feel that we're under. Oh, it's a great image and great line. But it's funny because you're at a level where you're filling rooms around the world, headlining, and you have a major label, and you're performing on Jimmy Kimmel, and you winning Ivor Novello awards, but you still have this feeling of maybe inadequacy or comparison, and you see someone else and it's like, oh man, why aren't I that? And like, do you feel like you'll ever be at a place where you feel settled and secure?
I think if that feeling ever does arrive, it won't be because of anything external. I think a feeling of settledness and arrival would happen a lot more because of whatever work I am doing and will do within. I know a lot of successful artists, and I know a lot of struggling artists, and I really think their success or lack thereof has no correlation to their level of self-acceptance and happiness.
Yeah, no, that's very wise. Doing that work within, I think it's
harder. It's easier said than done.
Sure, of course.
Because like obviously I want all the things, and
right.
And you do always. I mean, this is the thing that I feel like people don't quite understand, and I'm just beginning to understand. When you see an artist play a late night show or accepting an award or whatever it is, what you don't quite imagine is what it actually feels like to be there. You just see how it looks. But there's so much anxiety. There's so much self-expectation, so much pressure that can come along with those things, especially when you've been dreaming about them for a long time, because there's such a difference between watching something on screen and having it interact with you. You're part of the thing. You got to do something too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for example, meeting Chris Martin. Like, for so long, I had been watching his interviews and was just like, oh my God, I just, am so like such a fan of this artist. And I never ever, in all the years of dreaming about meeting him, I never once thought about what I would say back. I just thought he would be the interview to my face.
Yeah,
and then I could just, I never really, we just watch these people, So I think, and lo and behold, he's a human being. And I've gone through, he's been like the most helpful person in realizing that everyone's just a person, and
is he like, right? Because you've looked up to him for so long. I mean, the saying is don't meet your idols, but it seems to have gone just fine. And he's amazing. Like a very sweet person.
He's a very sweet person, but I think there's Chris, my friend, and there's Chris Martin and Coldplay. Coldplay. And I don't consider them the same person. Even though he's completely authentically himself in public, I somehow consider them different people. You know what I mean?
Is Victoria Canal the performer and my friend Victoria two different people?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess we all play different versions of ourselves in every scenario and situation, whether it's when you're with family. I mean, even non-artists and performers, when you're with family, you're going to operate differently than when you're with your friends or when you're at your job or anything like that. And it's just the job of an artist. It's so much more magnified with so many more eyeballs watching you and critiquing and criticizing, and everyone's got an opinion. Whereas the opinions that people have who are non-artists are just like office workspace whispers and stuff like that of whatever.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, let's talk about that, because you performed with Coldplay at Glastonbury, playing and singing Paradise, pretty wild. I mean, that's like a dream come true. It has to have been. I mean, so how did that all come to be? How did you meet Chris and get to play with Coldplay and now be welcomed into the Coldplay camp?
Do you know this story?
I know the story, but I want you to tell it. I was there for the story. So
Oh my God!
I was literally sitting in the room across from Andrew,
You
manager.
were.
Yeah, I was there. I witnessed
a
this
video
whole
where
thing.
you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm filming the video.
Oh my God!
But yeah, it was pretty
You were
cool.
there.
I was there.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. When I was in college,
Mm-hmm.
I made an April Fool's Rolling Stone cover.
Yeah.
And I was on the cover, and it said, Victoria Canal wows Chris Martin at a clown's birthday party and goes on tour with Coldplay forever and ever and ever, and features on every single album. And, and I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
It came up in one of those like haunting like time capsule repost things a couple years later, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'll repost it because it's just so funny. And so I did, and lo and behold, someone who works with Chris was following me and watching all my videos and saw that and was like, wow, I bet it would make Victoria's day to send Chris one of her videos. So he did. And shout out Dan McCarroll for championing me. It's, honestly, I owe him my career. But Chris responded to Dan and was like, oh my God, she's amazing. Let's get in touch. Let's see how we can help her. And so Dan, who by the way had like, his email was like dantheman69 at AOL dot whatever the fuck.
What?
Yeah. I might be exaggerating that, but it was like clearly felt like a spam email.
Yeah.
And so when he messaged me, I ignored it. And then he messaged Andrew and called Andrew and was like, Chris Martin's trying to get in touch with Victoria. Can you help?
Yeah.
So Andrew then got a text from Chris, and then Chris FaceTimed me, and I literally, oh no, what was it? Because you were there.
Well, I was there because Chris
texted Andrew.
First texted Andrew to make sure that this was okay, and so Andrew was giving you a heads up.
Andrew, my manager.
Andrew Lieb, also a previous guest on the show, but Andrew Lieb, your manager. Yes, we were together, and you were on set shooting something or another.
I was on set shooting a Swan Song music video that never came out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you were like at hair and makeup or something, and then Andrew's like, okay, Chris is going to call you. And you're what?
I was literally,
No.
I was on a mattress in the middle of a lake. I was on an air mattress in the middle of a lake, and they were like, you're getting a call. And then Andrew was like, and I freaked out. And then I literally couldn't sleep for like the next 3 days waiting for this call. And then finally Chris called me and asked me all about myself and was like, send me some demos. And so I sent him a couple demos, one of which was Swan Song. And he was like, I love this. I'd love to set up a meeting with the head of Parlophone. And it went from there. I got signed a little bit later, and cut to a couple years later, I was trying to get tickets to Glastonbury, and I texted him being like, hey, I was just wondering, like, could you get me into Glastonbury? And he called me. He was like, I have one better. Why don't you play with us?
Oh my God.
That way you'll definitely have tickets to Glastonbury.
Oh, come on.
Oh man. And I was like, of course, absolutely. So yeah, I played Paradise, and it was the craziest weekend of my life.
I bet.
Honestly, like the company those guys keep, and also just the level at which they operate. I mean, I have to say the performance itself was amazing, and hanging out with all these like A-listers backstage and all that jazz, like it was fun.
Right.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But the really special part was the rehearsal, because it was so tight. Every single person, I mean, there were hundreds of people there, was on their game.
Wow.
Super kind, super professional. And it was just very cool to see one of the biggest bands in the world prepare a show. You know, that was my takeaway.
So cool.
And just the fact that even within it, they were able to have fun. You know, they were able to do an excellent job and be super, super tight and efficient, but be kind and fun.
Yeah.
You know?
What did you take away from that experience?
Well, one thing watching Chris was just that he made everybody feel seen and heard and made them laugh, you know, and that can be really hard when there's a lot of pressure on you.
Sure.
And I'm not always the best person to do that, you know, but I think he was like running the songs, but then he'd get one of the crew to like come up on stage and dance around with him. And
cool.
You know, it's like, it was just an energy thing. And I think one of my takeaways was just that no matter what level you're operating at, like, the energy is up to you, you know, and is really your responsibility.
Yeah.
You set the tone. And I've been on a lot of different tours. I've been around a lot of different artists, and I can say for a fact that it can be really, really, really toxic. Really toxic.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Sure.
And in a way that damages people for a very long time. So, so I think it's like super important to be the leader and assume that role and really look after people. Yeah. You know, when they are dedicating their life and work to you and your project. Yeah. You know.
For sure. I mean, this lifestyle, an artist lifestyle, there aren't as many guidelines or playbooks, rule books, HR departments, really any of that. And so, you know, when you're operating, especially at a level where there's a lot of money on the line and you're playing for a lot of people and a lot of jobs are there, and there is that much pressure. I mean, and artists are not like natural people managers. Like that's a whole other skill set to be able to manage people.
Definitely.
And just be and it's one skill set to just be a brilliant songwriter and performer and artist. And then it's a whole other skill set to just be a good human and be amicable.
Especially when you're tired.
Oh my gosh. And also it's like, I mean, and you must have a lot of this where, because people who you have such short interactions, the artist has such short interactions with fans and just people, they will take that for the rest of their life.
Yes.
That 30-second interaction that a fan will have with you. They're going to remember that forever.
Yes.
You talk to people before shows, after shows, you see them, down the street, they come up to you, at a restaurant, whatever. Like, you won't remember 99% of those just because they happen so frequently. You just can't. But they will remember that. And do you feel is that awareness? Do you have that awareness? Like, so
Absolutely.
It's, you make sure that like, all right, I got to turn it on. But it's also got to be hard to just like always be on.
Yeah.
And when someone comes up to you, I mean, Chaperone made a lot of headlines when she was talking about how just like, she didn't want to turn it on for all of the fans that felt like, she had the responsibility just because they're a fan of hers or something like that. Yeah,
I mean, with Chaperone, I totally understand it because she has dealt with fans who are inappropriate and like stalking her family.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
That's
a whole other thing, and you really do have to set a boundary for that.
Sure.
I feel a little differently about what I owe my fans because I've been at this for a long time, and I'm just grateful for anyone that really takes the time to listen to my music, let alone spend money in a way that serves me.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything against her or her approach,
Yeah.
But I think when I've been around people who have that kind of recognition, like I'll never forget this. I was on a walk with my brother and a couple other like family members and friends and Tom Cruise last year.
Casual.
We met at Glastonbury, became friends, and hung out a few times. And when we were on this walk, we went to a park, and we were walking along, and there was like this body of water, and I said, hey, let's go check out the water. Like, there are ducks, and it looks nice. And you know, he's sort of like, okay, if you're sure, you know. And so we go out, and instantly, just like a flock of people. I mean, it starts like 2, and then 10, and then 50.
Oh my gosh.
And then there are 500 people just all wanting to take a picture with Tom.
Oh,
and
wow.
he takes, I mean, we must have been there 2.5 hours.
You didn't know you were signing up for it.
I didn't know what I was signing up for.
Let's just go for a walk.
I know.
See the
I've
ducks.
never been around anyone that famous.
Right.
So I was just like, let's go watch the ducks. You know?
If you're sure, Victoria, this is what you want. Right.
Yeah. And he stood there, I swear to God, for nearly 3 hours.
Oh my
talking
gosh.
to every single person, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand, being like, oh wow, Top Gun meant that to you. Like,
wow,
that's amazing. Wow, you have this is a gift for me. I can't believe it. Thank you so much.
Whoa.
And then afterwards he's like, wow, wasn't that cool? Like, that guy, and he joined the Navy because of my movie. That's so crazy. And you know, like, and that's a personality type. You know, I mean, he's there for that. And and it is all authentic.
Right.
It's amazing to watch, and it's so inspiring because he knows his power. And he knows that people are going to come away just feeling so grateful that he looked them in the eye and shook their hand. And
that's
know what I mean?
Amazing. That sounds exhausting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people to having to do that just, you know, out of the blue, you're just going for a walk and boom, your whole day is now that for 3 hours and having to be on and giving that experience and that moment to that person because they're going to remember that for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
But that's also why he's the superstar and one of the most famous people of all time.
Well, but there are some superstars that don't have that kind of
that's true.
interest. In fact, this is something that kind of annoys me about younger famous people.
Okay.
Is that they put their shades on and they're like, don't talk to me, I'm too cool for everyone. And like and once you get to a certain age, I feel like you just recognize how lucky you are to be where you are, because that shit might not last. I mean,
that's true.
He's one example of a career that's lasted through the decades, but there's so many people, it goes like this, you know, like careers it's not a straight ahead slope up, you know, and I've felt that even where I am, like there are moments of hyperactivity and then a couple months of just being like, oh my God, I'm not going anywhere. And then, you know, you release something again and something goes viral again and whatever. It's just a constant like wave, you know? So I think once you get to a certain age, you realize that to ever be granted a position of authority or success in this industry is such a gift. It's such a privilege, you know?
Yeah.
So I like hanging out with people of different generations to me, of across the board of like whether they've like technically made it or not, because they just have a different perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it is the most unstable career, I think, in existence because you can have those days or moments or months or years where you feel like you are just flying and you're on the up and up and everything is working out and everything's happening, and then it can all just like stop or crumble or halt, or you get, you know, something. So
that's what I call the God and Goblin complex.
God and Goblin complex? Yeah. Say more.
You know, there's a God complex, but I find like that I also have the Goblin complex where depending on the day, I either feel like the shit or like a piece of shit.
That's so funny. That's great. I love that.
That's what 15% is about, myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Slowly it dawns, I'm a pain in the ass. Yeah. I love that because you wouldn't expect, I didn't expect that's where that line, the album title, was going to go lyrically in the song. That's funny. So, well, speak to, I mean, you mentioned like, and then one day I go viral or something like that. I mean, we haven't even really touched on the pressures of social media or like what is expected of artists these days. I'm curious the difference in how you approach social media pre-label and now post major label, and if there are different pressures, different expectations, has it gotten easier? Has it gotten more challenging? Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about being on a major label is that people are quick to hire companies to do services for you. So, for example, like a digital services company to do your posts on your behalf, or to have like content ideation on your behalf. And to be completely honest, I've always found my own ideas and my own execution to perform better, to feel better, and to be more effective across the board in finding the fans that I want. So no amount of hiring these like outside services is going to replace who you are as an artist and what you have to provide and offer to fans.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think with social media, what you're ultimately trying to do is reach the people that you want to love your music. You kind of want to know who you're catering to.
Yeah.
For example, my very first tour, I was playing to older crowds and sometimes more conservative crowds and stuff like that, and that just wasn't my bag.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I want my crowd to be like queer 18-year-old girls that are like shy and sweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like, that's who I make my music for. And then if anybody else tags along, that's great. But like I feel like I've honed in on what I want my room to feel like and what I want my online like community to feel like. It's like a house, and who do I want in my house? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, so are you thinking about that when you're making posts? Like, who do I want my audience to be? And will this post attract those people? Or will it attract a different crowd and you don't want that?
Yes.
That is so wise. And because the pressures I feel like so many artists feel, and just creators in general, is just like all that matters are views, engagement, clicks, like the metrics that the social media companies tell us to care about.
Right.
But you're not thinking about that as much as you're thinking about an audience, a fan base.
Yeah. Who do I want?
Who do you want
to be part of my
the human
community?
beings?
Yeah.
Not the numbers.
Yes.
Because like a post that goes viral or something might be more detrimental if it's for the wrong reasons, like because the way that you look in the post or something like that, and it gets picked up, and now you've attracted a bunch of people who like the way you look,
right.
and maybe for the wrong reasons and are not really diving into your music or care about anything else.
Yeah.
But maybe you do a post that gets, a couple thousand people that are engaging with it or whatever, but they're all your people,
right.
and they might stay with you for life, where the others are fleeting, and it's just like mess up the algorithm and everything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I will say the algorithm haunts me actively, like I do feel like it is something that like, it's so frustrating to have gained the followers that I have worked hard to find, and then not be able to reach those people. The amount of times I play a show and then the day after I post about it and people are like, "Oh my God, you were in San Diego! I can't believe it!" And I was like, I posted about it at least 30 times.
Yeah, right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it is frustrating, and I don't know what the hack is in terms of like reaching the people that literally decided to follow you. Actually, one of the ways that I have combated that, and this has been a label effort and management effort, is like a WhatsApp and text community. So basically, at every show, even though it's not very sexy to do, I didn't do this last night, but I usually do. I will read out a phone number, and people, if they text it, I respond. Like I go on there every day and I like look at the text message. People can send me whatever they want, and I send them things like music early and like photos from tour and things like that. Just like a little bit of an exclusive club. Yeah. I'm not asking for money. Yeah. It's just more so their loyalty and like commitment to actually knowing what's going on with my project, so I think that's a good way to like combat the algorithm, because those people are enough of a fan to have chosen to follow you and keep in touch with you.
Right, because the ultimate goal at the end of the day is not more views on TikTok or more followers on Instagram. It's more fans that will be with you, coming to your shows, listening to your music, buying your merch, and being supportive for life.
Yes.
And so when you think of it like that, where you kind of push away the influence of the pressures of like what we're taught or what we're expected from the social media companies or the streaming companies or whatever. And you're like, okay, how do I get somebody to my show? And if Instagram's going to squash the algorithm on anything promotional, so it's like getting their phone numbers, you can go direct to them. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like when it comes to choosing, for example, if you're an up-and-coming artist and you're trying to field opportunities for support, you know, the biggest tour might not be the best tour for you.
Right.
Playing a stadium might not be what you actually want, even though it feels cool because you're like, I'm opening for such and such on this huge tour. But it's such a wide net, and I feel like it's more effective, at least it has been for me, to open for artists whose smaller but very dedicated and very niche following is more likely the kind of fan that I want. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
No, that's a great point. And it's similar to how you're approaching social media, where it's like, how do I track the audience that I want? But it's, same with opening tours, because you want that audience. It's not about the number of people there. And it's also not really about, does your music overlap with that artist's music? You know, are you in the same genre or whatever? It's will their fans get into your music? Yeah. You mentioned earlier how, the type of fan that you want, the 18-year-old queer girl who, is there. Now, you played the Kennedy Center after it had broken that Trump took it over. Yeah. A lot of artists canceled their performances there loudly and taking a stand. Why did you continue with your performance there?
Well, I felt like canceling for me felt like silencing myself. And I thought that I would be able to have more impact and probably create a moment that felt louder by going right into the belly of the beast. And I wanted to see for myself what was happening. Yeah. You know, the older I get, I feel like I'm harnessing my anger in a pretty helpful way. Yeah. I think I always just was like, I need to be nice, and I'm a pretty young girl, and I need to like fit this little teeny tiny mold, and I need to be a kind, sweet person. And that's what the world wants me to be. That's what the patriarchy wants me to be. They want me to cancel my show and stay out of the way. And I, with every passing day, I'm harnessing my power and what that means to me personally. And for me, in that moment, it meant advocating for trans people, donating my fee to trans equality, advocates for trans equality, and showing up there wearing my anti-Trump shirt and saying, I'm fucking here and I'm gay. Yeah. And these employees are folding away their pride flags because they're being surveilled by these like new Trump people who won't allow it. I mean, it's literally shocking to come into this space where I've been there before. I've performed at the Kennedy Center before as an 18-year-old or 17-year-old or something. And I was being awarded the Presidential Scholar Award in the Arts. And the energy was so different. It was so inclusive and so global and, international and like intercultural. Yeah. And diverse. And just this time, like all the employees, the existing employees felt like they were kind of crouching and hiding. And multiple people pulled me aside afterwards crying to thank me for saying something, for doing and being my authentic self on that stage in this time. Yeah. And I knew that it would be a viral moment. Yeah. And
for the right reasons.
For the right reasons. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to stand up to the bully. And
which, my God, took a lot of courage and is like, have you gotten blowback from it?
Dude.
I'm like that.
Dude, the days following online, I literally had to like be in therapy constantly. Like the amount of the thousands of comments that were coming in attacking my appearance, attacking my gender like identity, my everything, my weight, my disability, everything, and just calling me vile things, and to the point where I discovered a new feature where you can have comments where it's just people that follow you and that you follow. And the thing is that the people that are commenting those vile things don't even follow me.
No,
they don't care about my
they're
music.
trolls.
They don't care who I am.
Right. No.
But it was getting to the point where I was getting like hundreds of comments a minute, and I was like, this needs to change, because some of the stuff that I'm reading, I mean, I know they're trolls, but God, it can cut deep when you're a sensitive soul.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but to be honest, it made me stronger.
Yeah.
And that is something I'm learning. I'm currently going through some shit, you know, and it's like the difficult shit that happens to us, it makes us realize our own power. It's a shitty thing that it has to happen to us.
Yeah.
But we do discover our power within it, and our resilience, our capacity for resilience. So I am a resilient motherfucker.
Yes, you are.
Like more than most people know.
Yes, you are.
More than most people will probably ever know.
Yeah. Incredible. Victoria, this has been incredible.
Thank
you so much for coming by on your day off on tour. I have one final question that I do ask everyone who comes on the show, and that is, what does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
What does it mean to make it?
Mm-hmm. What does making it mean to you?
I think making it means literally focusing on the making of what you do. Process, and fully finding fulfillment, purpose, mission in the making of ...
Love it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think making it, it's kind of a funny saying. It's like making it is just literally making stuff.
Just making it, yeah.
Yeah.
Victoria Canal, thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Thanks. Today's episode was edited by Ari Davids with music by Grassroots District and produced by all the great people at Ari's Take.